Tell me honestly, how many times have you walked out of a room with a woman feeling like something was taken from you, yet you couldn't name what? It wasn't your money, not your time. It was your power, melting off you like wax from a burning candle as you tried to be heard. You spoke, smiled, bent, but in return, silence. And in that silence, you disappeared. You thought she was listening. She was measuring. Every word became a weight on her scale. And you, trying to prove your worth, ended up dissolving your own. This isn't a game. This is an ancient script men have been losing for centuries. They were told, to be accepted, you must speak. But nature never gave the lion a microphone. It gave him presence. Nikola Tesla, surrounded by the brilliance of his mind, lived alone, not because he couldn't love, but because he didn't chase. He knew, when your energy is concentrated, it draws. When it's scattered, it begs. He stayed silent, and the world came to him. You want to be heard because you're terrified of being forgotten. You fear her silence because in it, you vanish. But here's the truth. The man who remains silent with dignity becomes the echo in her mind. A man who hasn't learned stillness becomes the fool in someone else's theater. Every explanation isn't honesty. It's an apology for existing. Every justification is a silent form of kneeling. And she can feel when you bow, even if you're standing tall. Power isn't in being understood. Power is in not needing to be. Because need is a noose, and silence is the blade that cuts it loose. You don't lose when she leaves. You lose when you run after her. He who chases always looks up from below, and those above never look down at the man explaining himself. Learn to sit in silence, not like a prisoner, but like a throne no one dares to move. Silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. Presence so sharp it slices through illusion. It exposes those who can't bear to meet their own reflection. A man who doesn't explain himself, not out of arrogance but wholeness, becomes a riddle. And then the fear begins, not yours, hers, because she can't calculate you. And what can't be calculated can't be controlled. You owe no explanation. You owe yourself. And if your truth unsettles her, it means you finally become visible. Have you noticed how quickly you vanish the moment she goes quiet? No yelling, no blaming, no tears, just silence. And suddenly, everything you built inside begins to fall apart. You call it love, but it's dependence. You name it sensitivity, but it's hunger, a hunger to be needed, a hunger she was never obligated to satisfy. A woman who holds silence holds a weapon, and she may not always know how precise it strikes, but you do. With every cell, every sleepless night, every "why won't she answer me?" You don't live beside her, you live beneath her reaction. You don't feed on food, you feed on her validation, her yes, her "I see you." And without it, you're hollow. But let me say what no one dares to say. She didn't make you weak. You did. You softened the moment you feared her silence. You surrendered when you mistook quiet for rejection. You wanted to be understood, to be felt, to be seen. You longed for her to feel your pain, your efforts, your soul. But you forgot one thing. A real soul needs no witness. It simply exists, or it doesn't. You became food, not a man, but a resource, feeding her ego with your anxiety, quenching her fear of being alone with your explanations, handing her power because you never learned how to sit in emptiness. But here's the truth. Her silence is not her power. It's your weakness. As long as you depend on her response, you're not free. As long as you fear her walking away, you're not with her. You're beneath her. Want to know when her respect begins? The first time you go quiet and stay that way. Not to punish, not to hurt, but because you've chosen silence not as a pause, but as a path. You stop explaining. Stop arguing. Stop chasing her attention. You step out of the game, and in that moment, you become dangerous. Because a woman who is used to feeding off male neediness becomes lost in front of a man who asks for nothing and gives nothing except the mirror, and in the mirror, her fear, to not be desired, to lose control, to not command your emotions. You don't need to fight her. You need to be freed from what makes you weak in front of her, and that is your hunger to be needed. You want to know what truly unsettles a woman. Not cruelty, not betrayal, not even infidelity, but a man who is silent and does not need. A man who disappears not to be chased, not to punish, but because he has nothing left to say. That's not absence, that's completion. Cleopatra understood the power of beauty, of voice, of gaze. She could bring empires to their knees, unravel generals with a single word. But even she lost her ground before men she could not read. Julius Caesar was with her but never under her. He was intrigued but not possessed. And that made him a threat, not a conquest. Because power over a man who does not fear losing you is impossible. And a woman's fear is born precisely there, in the silence that does not plead, does not explain, does not return. A woman can rule millions of words, but stands powerless before a man who no longer craves her approval. She can stage scenes, withdraw, provoke guilt, vanish. But if you sit still, if your eyes do not beg, do not burn, do not tremble, she is no longer dealing with you. She's dealing with herself, because your silence is a room full of mirrors, and her games echo in every one of them. You fear her leaving, because you never learned to be alone. She fears your silence because she never learned to control it. This is the symmetry of pain. But one of you must step out, not to win, but to be free. A man who has learned to be silent like a king, not like a wounded child, becomes a space, a presence in which a woman doesn't feel like the owner, but a guest, and that disturbs her, because she's used to walking in and rearranging everything. But this time, it's different. This time, you don't run after her. You don't sulk. You don't erupt. You just exist, calm, unattached, without need, without demand. A woman accustomed to reaction gets lost in the absence of it, because every man before you bowed to her moods. Every man asked to be understood. Every man returned, but not you. Not because you're proud, but because you're free. And in that lies the most dangerous masculine power. Not in muscles, not in money, not in speaking, but in not speaking when provoked, in not replying when played with, in not flinching when ignored. She can cry, vanish, grow silent. But if you do not tremble, do not chase, do not collapse, you remain a force that cannot be bargained with. And it is only when you are emptied of need and full of presence that she returns, not to you as a prize, but to you as a foundation. Because a woman will always be drawn to the center, to the axis that doesn't sway, where she doesn't need to ask why you stand, you simply stand, and that alone is victory. You don't recognize yourself when she goes quiet. It's not just a pause, it's as if something twists your insides and you stop being a man. You become hunger. You turn into restlessness wearing human skin. Your fingers reach for your phone. Your mind searches for reasons. Your heart invents excuses. You're no longer living, you're guessing. And all your dignity, like flesh slipping off bone, dissolves into one question. Why hasn't she replied? That's your downfall. Not because she walked away, but because you disappeared within yourself the moment her silence entered. She became the center of your reality. Not because she's a goddess, but because you forgot who you are. Because you handed her the power to dictate your reactions. And a man ruled by reaction has no freedom. And now you're arguing with the air, rehearsing conversations that never happened, imagining how you'll say it all. But in reality, you say nothing, because you're terrified to lose her completely. But don't you see? It's your fear of loss that makes you so easily lost. You need to understand this. A woman doesn't control you with words. She controls you through your fear of being alone, through your intolerance of uncertainty, through your craving to be liked, to be agreeable, to be understood. And every time you bend under that craving, you teach her to hold a power she never even asked for. She tests you not out of cruelty, but out of nature. A woman is an eternal test, not of loyalty, of integrity, of whether you'll stay yourself when everything around you screams, change, conform, explain. And most men fail, because inside, they're still boys. Boys who need mommy not to be mad. Boys who can't endure a woman's disapproval. Boys who trade their dignity for a message that says, I miss you. But there are others. Men who walk through pain without losing their face. Men who endure the cold without losing the warmth within. Men who go silent not from resentment, but from principle. Because they know any word spoken from weakness will be used against them. The man who doesn't flinch in silence becomes a wall. Not the kind you crash into, but the kind you want to hide behind when the storm comes. Because there's a peace that radiates from a man who doesn't panic. And in this chaotic, frantic world, peace is the rarest and most valuable thing of all. You have to choose. Either you're a reaction to her silence or the foundation around which everything revolves. Either you're a beggar or you're the space itself. And if you don't choose, she will choose for you. Because a woman always knows. She's either with a man or a boy, and she acts accordingly. You want to know when everything shifts, not when she comes back, not when you win the argument, but the moment you no longer need her reaction to feel your worth. That's where power begins, not over her, but over yourself. You stop playing, you stop waiting, you stop being a piece moved by someone else's mood. You become the board, the ground, the gravity that pulls everything toward you, without trying. As long as you were explaining, you were weak. As long as you were convincing, you were beneath. As long as you wanted to be heard, you gave away your voice. But now, you're silent. And in that silence, you are whole. Not because you don't care, but because you've chosen to remain yourself, even in solitude. Power isn't in loud words, it's in needing none. And if you've truly reached this point, then you already know. Silence isn't a pause, it's a decision. It's the refusal to be someone else's project. It's the death of dependence and the birth of sovereignty. The world is built on men who begged, proved, waited. But you're not one of them. You are the one who doesn't fear being misunderstood, who doesn't apologize for his boundaries, who doesn't kneel for someone else's comfort. You're not cold, you're not indifferent, you're whole. And wholeness terrifies, because it cannot be bent, it can only be earned. When you reach this depth, she feels it. She no longer plays. She doesn't provoke. She doesn't vanish, because she knows there may not be a second chance. And that's not a threat. It's just the truth. You've become the one who chooses, not out of pride, but out of fullness, because you no longer need to be needed. You don't explain, you exist. You don't react, you observe. You don't cling, you release. And in that lies everything you were chasing all along. Now you are no longer noise. You are the silence that remains after the storm. You are the absence of chaos she can't forget. You are the choice that never begged to be chosen. If this message struck something in you, don't keep it silent. Drop a comment below and let me know what you felt. Subscribe to the channel if you're ready to join a generation of men who no longer bow, no longer beg, and no longer explain themselves just to be accepted. Men who choose silence and change everything with it.